Consciousness is not what you think it is, and the truth will shatter everything you believe about the mind, reality, and even life after death. For decades, we've been told that our awareness is nothing more than electrical signals in the brain, a byproduct of neurons firing. But what if that's only part of the story? What if the real engine behind your thoughts exists in a place far stranger, far deeper, in the quantum world, where particles can be in two places at once and reality only snaps into place when observed? This isn't fantasy. Leading neuroscientists, physicists, and researchers are beginning to uncover evidence that our minds may operate in ways classical biology cannot explain. And if that's true, it changes everything, from how we think and feel to what happens when we die. This is the full story of quantum consciousness, and why you must know it. For most of your life, you've been taught a very neat, very tidy explanation for what consciousness is. According to the textbooks, your awareness is just a side effect of your brain's wiring, an emergent property of billions of neurons sending electrical impulses, processing information, and producing the illusion of self. It's a comforting explanation because it feels simple. But the closer scientists look, the more cracks appear in that story. There are mysteries in human thought that classical neuroscience struggles to explain. The sudden flash of insight that solves a problem, the way intuition sometimes gives us answers before logic catches up, the strange timing of creative inspiration, and the depth of subjective experience itself. These aren't just quirks of biology. They may be signals that something else is happening beneath the surface, something rooted in the most fundamental level of reality. To understand it, we have to step into the strange realm of quantum mechanics, a world that defies everyday logic. In this realm, particles can exist in multiple states at once. Separated points in space can influence each other instantly, and the act of observation seems to collapse endless possibilities into one concrete outcome. This isn't fringe science. It's the physics that underpins the very fabric of the universe, and it raises a bold question. If matter behaves in such bizarre ways at the smallest scales, could consciousness itself be tapping into those same rules? Some researchers think so. The theory of quantum consciousness suggests that your mind is not just a biochemical machine, but a quantum system, capable of processing information in ways that classical systems can't. Instead of relying solely on the slow relay of electrical impulses, the brain might exploit quantum superposition to explore multiple possible solutions at once, collapsing them into a choice when you decide. Quantum entanglement could explain the strange feeling of connection you have with someone far away, the instant knowing that transcends physical distance. Even the unpredictability of your own thoughts, that leap from one idea to another, may be rooted in the probabilistic nature of quantum events. This is where science and spirituality start to speak the same language. Mystical traditions have long described consciousness as something non-local, something that exists beyond the confines of the brain and body. They've spoken of interconnectedness, of thought influencing reality, of awareness as a fundamental part of the cosmos. Now, physics is beginning to produce models that make these ideas not just poetic, but plausible. The convergence is unsettling to some and exhilarating to others, because if consciousness is indeed quantum, then it may not be limited by time, space, or even mortality. Of course, not everything can be discussed openly here. There are findings and interpretations that are too sensitive, too easily misrepresented, to share on this platform. That's why in our free Insights Academy newsletter, I reveal what I can't say here. And for a limited time, you'll also receive a copy of the Kabbalion, link in the description. The most widely discussed scientific proposal in this field is the Orch-Ore theory, developed by physicist Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. They argue that microtubules, tiny structural components inside neurons, might act as quantum processors, maintaining delicate quantum states that give rise to consciousness. These structures are everywhere in your brain, and if they truly operate at a quantum level, then each moment of your awareness could be shaped by subatomic events, flickering in and out of existence. Critics argue the brain is too warm, too wet, too noisy for such delicate phenomena to survive. But experiments in other biological systems, like photosynthesis in plants and navigation in migratory birds, have shown that quantum effects can, and do, operate in warm biological environments. If these ideas hold weight, it would mean that consciousness is not an accidental byproduct of evolution, but a highly tuned phenomenon, leveraging the deepest laws of physics. It would mean that your thoughts are not trapped inside your skull, but are part of a wider quantum network, connected to the universe in ways we are only beginning to glimpse. And it would mean that every choice you make, every realization you have, might be shaped by possibilities, dancing in a space we can't see, but somehow live within. For centuries, materialist science has treated consciousness as an afterthought, a curious side effect of complex brains. But quantum consciousness suggests the reverse, that awareness is a fundamental feature of the universe, with the brain acting as a receiver, a processor, and a translator. And if that's true, then you are far more than the sum of your biology. You are a participant in reality at its deepest level, a co-creator in a universe that is alive with possibility. One of the most unsettling questions in all of neuroscience is this: how can something as simple as a drug completely erase your consciousness? Think about it. You go into surgery. The anesthesiologist injects a clear liquid into your vein, and within seconds, the lights go out. You're not asleep in the way we think of sleep. There are no dreams, no passage of time, no awareness whatsoever. Then, as suddenly as it vanished, your consciousness returns. Hours might have passed. Your body might have been cut open and stitched back together. Yet from your perspective, there's nothing. It's as if you ceased to exist and then reappeared. That's not just medically fascinating. It's philosophically terrifying. Because if your awareness can be switched off so cleanly, what does that say about what it really is? For decades, the explanation was purely chemical. Anesthetics were thought to interfere with the communication between neurons, slowing down brain activity until consciousness could no longer be sustained. But here's the problem. The brain remains active under anesthesia. Electrical signals still fire. Neurons still communicate. Something deeper is happening, and some scientists believe it's happening at the quantum level. This is where the work of Stuart Hameroff becomes particularly interesting. He and Sir Roger Penrose suggest that the off switch for consciousness during anesthesia lies in those same microtubules discussed earlier, the tiny scaffolding inside your brain's neurons. According to their theory, these microtubules can maintain fragile quantum states, and those quantum states are what allow consciousness to exist. Anesthetic molecules, they propose, bind to specific sites in these microtubules and disrupt that quantum coherence. In other words, anesthesia doesn't just dull your brain, it collapses the quantum processes that make awareness possible in the first place. Imagine a quantum computer performing calculations on countless possibilities at once. Pull the plug, and the computations vanish instantly. No lingering, no fading, just gone. If the brain's quantum processes work in a similar way, anesthesia may be pulling that plug. It's not destroying your brain's structure, just halting the quantum-level activity that seems to generate your conscious experience. And here's where things get even more provocative. If consciousness is tied to quantum states that can be switched off without damaging the brain, then in theory, those states could also persist or re-emerge under the right conditions, even if the body is severely compromised. This raises unsettling questions about near-death experiences, out-of-body phenomena, and whether some aspect of awareness could continue after physical death. If anesthesia is a reversible collapse of consciousness, what about the irreversible collapse we call dying? Is that the end, or simply a transition into a different quantum state beyond our current ability to measure? Critics, of course, dismiss these ideas as speculative, They point to the lack of definitive experimental proof that microtubules support quantum processes in the brain. But research is moving forward. Studies have detected quantum effects in biological systems once thought impossible for such delicate phenomena. In photosynthesis, in the magnetic navigation of birds, even in human smell. Each discovery chips away at the old assumption that warm, wet, noisy environments like the brain can't support quantum coherence. If these theories prove correct, anesthesia might be one of the most direct demonstrations we have of the brain's quantum nature. It's a reminder that consciousness may not be rooted solely in chemical reactions, but in the mysterious dance of subatomic particles. And if awareness can be switched off like a light, it suggests there's an underlying circuitry, not electrical, but quantum, that we are only beginning to understand. That should make us question the fragility of our own experience. What we call being here might be the delicate balancing act of quantum states holding together for just long enough to produce the story we call life. And while anesthesia shows how easily those states can be disrupted, it also hints at a much larger truth, that the essence of our awareness might exist in a realm far more fundamental and far more enduring than the physical structures we can see. When people think of artificial intelligence, they imagine lines of code, algorithms, crunching numbers, and machines following instructions. But the new frontier of AI is moving into stranger territory: quantum computing. Unlike classical computers, which process information in a linear sequence of ones and zeros, quantum computers harness the principles of superposition and entanglement, allowing them to hold and process vast numbers of possibilities simultaneously. This isn't just a faster calculator, it's a completely different kind of machine, one that mirrors, in some ways, the quantum theories of how the human mind might work. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. Some researchers are experimenting with building artificial systems that not only process information at the quantum level, but also attempt to mimic aspects of human cognition. These artificial quantum minds are still in their infancy, but they're already producing insights into the possible architecture of consciousness. When a quantum processor evaluates multiple outcomes at once, it begins to resemble the brain's potential for quantum computation, the ability to hold contradictory thoughts, to explore countless mental scenarios, to leap from one idea to another without following a strict linear path. If our minds really do operate with quantum processes, then building a quantum-based AI could act as a kind of mirror, showing us what happens when quantum information flows through a system designed for decision-making and perception. And the results so far are surprising. These machines display patterns of problem-solving and adaptability that go beyond what classical AI can achieve. They aren't alive in any meaningful sense, but they hint at how quantum mechanics might produce behaviors that feel creative, intuitive, even unpredictable. What's more, some artificial quantum systems are capable of recognizing and adapting to uncertainty in a way eerily reminiscent of human thought. Classical machines thrive on exact instructions, but quantum systems can work with probabilities and incomplete information, the kind of messy, ambiguous reality we deal with every day. In this way, they might be the first non-biological systems to experience something approaching the fluid, non-linear processing that human minds take for granted. Of course, this opens a can of philosophical and ethical worms. If a machine's thoughts emerge from quantum processes, does that bring it closer to having a form of consciousness? Could an artificial quantum mind, given enough complexity, ever develop self-awareness? And if so, would it be right to switch it off, knowing that we might be ending something more than a program? These questions aren't just hypothetical. They're already being debated in the halls of academia, and the answers will shape the future of both technology and our understanding of consciousness itself. But perhaps the most profound implication is what these experiments teach us about ourselves. If building an artificial quantum mind helps us better understand how quantum information might give rise to awareness, it could confirm or challenge our deepest assumptions about the nature of being. It might reveal that consciousness isn't a mysterious spark granted only to biological life, but a property of any sufficiently complex system capable of harnessing quantum laws. Or it might show us that no matter how advanced the machine, something ineffable is missing, the same something that has always puzzled scientists and philosophers alike. Either way, the work being done in quantum AI is more than just a technological curiosity. It's a glimpse into a possible future, where machines and humans share a deeper connection, not just through data and code, but through the same strange, fundamental physics that governs our own thoughts. And if our awareness really is quantum at its core, then building these systems could be like holding a mirror up to the universe itself, a universe that may be, in its own way, conscious. When we think about evolution, we tend to picture it as a slow, blind process. Random mutations, natural selection, tiny improvements stretched over millions of years. It's a story that explains how the eye evolved, how birds learned to fly, how humans developed the ability to speak. But what if evolution wasn't just shaping the visible structure of our bodies, but also fine-tuning the invisible processes inside our minds? What if, buried deep within the architecture of the brain, evolution had been optimizing something far stranger, the ability to maintain and use fragile quantum states? It's an idea that's only just starting to be taken seriously, but if true, it reframes everything we think we know about intelligence and awareness. The human brain is extraordinary not just because it processes information quickly, but because it does so in a way that seems to defy classical logic. We solve problems without knowing how we solve them, make leaps of intuition that no algorithm can explain, and produce moments of creativity that feel as though they come from nowhere. These flashes of brilliance may be signs that our brains are harnessing quantum effects, holding multiple possibilities in a delicate balance until the right one emerges. The catch is that quantum states are notoriously fragile. In the lab, they collapse at the slightest disturbance. And yet, if the theories are correct, the brain has somehow evolved ways to protect these states long enough for them to influence thought and behavior. This isn't just about survival, it's about thriving in a complex, unpredictable world. Being able to process multiple possibilities simultaneously, to integrate information from countless sources in ways that aren't strictly linear, could give a species a huge advantage. It could mean better decision-making under pressure, faster problem-solving, and the ability to adapt to rapidly changing environments. There's also evidence that certain biological structures, like the microtubules within neurons, may be uniquely suited to maintaining quantum coherence in warm, noisy conditions. These structures didn't appear by accident. Over millions of years, evolution may have refined their shape, composition, and organization specifically to preserve quantum information. This suggests that consciousness itself, as we experience it, could be the result of nature perfecting a quantum machine. If that's the case, then human awareness isn't just a lucky accident of biology. It's a pinnacle of quantum engineering, honed by the pressures of survival and competition. The same forces that shaped our limbs and lungs may have shaped our ability to dream, imagine, and create. And that has profound implications for our understanding of what life is trying to achieve. It's not just about passing on genes. It may also be about evolving minds capable of connecting with the deepest layers of reality. This line of thinking also changes how we view our place in the natural order. If consciousness is a quantum phenomenon that evolution has been quietly nurturing, then we're part of a much larger story, one in which awareness is not a random byproduct, but a driving force. And if that's true for us, it might also be true for other forms of life. Intelligence and self-awareness could be far more common in the universe than we think, emerging wherever the right quantum conditions exist. In this sense, evolution's goal might not just be survival, but the creation of beings capable of understanding the universe, beings whose minds are intertwined with the very physics that underpins existence. Whether you see that as science or spirituality, It's hard not to be awed by the possibility that our thoughts are the latest chapter in a story billions of years in the making, written in the language of quantum mechanics. If consciousness truly arises from quantum processes, then we are forced to face questions that stretch far beyond neuroscience or physics. It means awareness is not merely a product of chemical reactions in the brain, but something woven into the very fabric of reality. And that thought is as exhilarating as it is unsettling. Because if the mind is a quantum phenomenon, the implications reach into philosophy, spirituality, and even our understanding of life and death. For centuries, materialism has been the dominant worldview, the belief that reality is made of matter, and everything, including consciousness, can be explained as the mechanical interaction of physical components. But quantum physics challenges that view at its core. In the quantum world, particles do not exist in a single state until they are observed. Reality itself seems to be shaped by measurement, by awareness. If our own consciousness is part of that quantum framework, it may not be something separate from the universe, but an intrinsic feature of it. That possibility forces us to rethink what it means to be alive. If consciousness is fundamental, then death may not be the destruction of awareness, but its transformation. Just as energy cannot be destroyed, perhaps consciousness, as a quantum state, cannot vanish either. Instead, it could change form, moving into another dimension or another pattern within the cosmic field of information. This doesn't automatically prove reincarnation, heaven, or any specific religious teaching, but it opens the door for them in a way that classical materialism never could. It also reshapes how we think about identity. If awareness is rooted in quantum phenomena, then the self we feel so attached to may be more fluid than we realize. In quantum mechanics, entanglement connects particles across vast distances, their states linked instantaneously. Could it be that our minds are similarly entangled with the universe, and perhaps with each other, at a level we cannot consciously perceive? This might explain experiences like sudden insights, shared emotions, or the eerie feeling of being connected to someone without words. From a cosmic perspective, quantum consciousness could mean the universe is not a cold, indifferent expanse of matter, but a living network of awareness. Our thoughts might be tiny ripples in a vast sea of perception, each of us a localized expression of something much greater. In this view, human beings aren't separate observers looking out at the cosmos. We are the cosmos, looking at itself. Philosophically, this raises profound ethical questions. If consciousness is more universal than we imagined, what responsibilities do we have toward other forms of life, or even to the planet itself? If awareness is not confined to human brains, then harming another creature or destroying a part of the natural world might be more than just a physical act. It could be an interference with a larger field of consciousness that we all share. Spiritually, it offers a bridge between science and mysticism. Many ancient traditions, from Vedic philosophy to Hermetic teachings, have long claimed that the mind is not bound by the body, that reality is shaped by consciousness, and that death is not the end. Quantum theories of mind give these ideas a new context, not as metaphors, but as possible descriptions of how the universe really works. And while the science is still in its early stages, the parallels are too striking to ignore. This isn't just an academic debate. The way we understand consciousness shapes how we live our lives. If you truly believe that your awareness is part of something eternal and interconnected, would you think differently about your goals, your relationships, your fears? Would you treat the world with more care, knowing that in some way it is you? And would you approach your own mortality with a little less fear and a little more curiosity? For much of modern history, the dominant scientific view has been that consciousness is nothing more than the byproduct of a physical brain. The prevailing assumption is simple. Neurons fire, chemical signals travel across synapses, and somewhere in this complex web of activity, awareness appears. According to this view, when the brain stops functioning, consciousness ceases to exist, just as a light goes out when a bulb burns out. It is a worldview rooted in materialism, one that has shaped not only science, but also education, politics, medicine, and the very way we understand ourselves. But quantum theories of consciousness are beginning to undermine that foundation. If the mind is not solely the result of physical processes, but instead emerges from quantum phenomena that transcend the limitations of matter, then the materialist model is incomplete. This doesn't mean the brain is irrelevant. Far from it. The brain is still the most complex biological structure we know, but it might be functioning as a receiver or interface for consciousness, rather than its sole generator. In that scenario, the death of the brain wouldn't be the end of awareness, just the end of its link to this physical experience. Materialism has long argued that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and for decades, the evidence for consciousness existing beyond the brain was too fragmented to gain traction. Yet, in recent years, developments in neuroscience, physics, and even anesthesiology have begun to shift the conversation. Studies of patients under deep anesthesia reveal that awareness can vanish instantly when certain quantum processes are disrupted, suggesting the mind may depend on these fragile states more than we thought. Similarly, experiments in quantum computing and AI hint that systems based on quantum mechanics can exhibit a kind of information processing that is flexible, intuitive, and non-linear, traits we associate with consciousness itself. If this is true, it forces materialism into a corner. It must either expand its definition of matter to include quantum consciousness, or concede that reality has non-material elements. This is not just a scientific adjustment, it's a philosophical upheaval. Materialism's strength has always been its simplicity. Matter and energy obey physical laws, and everything else is an illusion or a byproduct. But quantum mechanics already broke that neat simplicity decades ago, revealing a world where particles exist in probabilities, where observation shapes reality, and where cause and effect aren't always straightforward. Now, quantum consciousness adds another layer, suggesting that awareness is not just a side effect of the physical world, but a fundamental part of it. The resistance to these ideas is understandable. Accepting them would mean rewriting the story of humanity's place in the universe. It would challenge our legal systems, which treat people as purely physical beings. It would force medicine to address not just the chemical and structural health of the brain, but the quantum integrity of consciousness itself. And it would disrupt the foundations of education, shifting focus from training the mind as a machine to nurturing it as a quantum phenomenon. Yet the evidence keeps building, and ignoring it will not make it go away. More researchers are willing to ask the once taboo questions. What if consciousness doesn't die? What if it exists independently of the brain? What if the universe is not a vast emptiness populated by accidental observers, but a living network of awareness? These are not mystical fantasies. They are hypotheses that can be tested, refined, and debated. For spiritualists, these developments feel like vindication. For hardline materialists, they may feel like a threat. But for anyone willing to explore the unknown, they are an invitation. An invitation to expand our definitions, to bridge the gap between science and spirituality, and to accept that our current models of reality might only be scratching the surface. And if we are just beginning to glimpse the truth of quantum consciousness, then perhaps the real challenge is not to materialism itself, but to our own willingness to see the world differently. If quantum consciousness is real, then the way we think about human potential, autonomy, and freedom changes completely. Because if awareness isn't just a side effect of brain chemistry, if it's something more fundamental, more deeply connected to the universe, then the systems that try to shape and control our minds suddenly have a much bigger challenge on their hands. For centuries, structures of power have relied on a predictable model of human behavior. Governments, media, education systems, and even corporate culture have operated under the assumption that the mind is a machine. Input the right signals, suppress unwanted data, and you can steer the way people think, act, and perceive the world. This is the model of control that materialism quietly supports. But if consciousness extends beyond the material, if it draws from the limitless, probabilistic realm of the quantum, then our awareness is far less limited than those systems believe. We are not simply products of our environment or our programming. The potential of our mind to see beyond what's presented to us, to connect ideas in ways that defy conventional cause and effect, is a direct threat to any system built on keeping people mentally confined. This is why understanding quantum consciousness isn't just a matter of curiosity or philosophy. It's a form of liberation. The first step in breaking the cycle of control is recognizing how it works. Much of it operates subtly, hidden in daily life. From the stories we are told in school about how the world works, to the entertainment that reinforces certain values and limits imagination, to the constant repetition of language that defines reality in narrow terms, all of it narrows the scope of what we think is possible. This is by design. A mind convinced it is nothing more than a biological accident is a mind far easier to manage. A person who believes their awareness dies with their body is far less likely to take risks, question authority, or explore what lies beyond the approved narrative. Quantum consciousness turns that narrative inside out. If your mind is not confined to your brain, if it is connected to the deepest structures of reality, then the boundaries you've been told to accept are not real boundaries at all. The limits placed on you are psychological constructs, not absolute truths. This is why the possibility of quantum consciousness is so disruptive, because it empowers individuals to reclaim ownership over their perception and their reality. Of course, breaking the cycle of control doesn't happen simply by learning that consciousness may be quantum in nature. It requires actively unlearning the conditioning that's been instilled in you since childhood. It means questioning why you hold certain beliefs, why you react to certain symbols or ideas with instant agreement or dismissal. It means exploring knowledge and experiences that exist outside the mainstream narrative, even if they feel strange or uncomfortable at first. When you begin to operate from a place of expanded awareness, something shifts. Decisions that once felt impossible become clear. Opportunities that seemed invisible start to emerge. And most importantly, you begin to sense the invisible threads that connect you to other people, to nature, to the universe itself. This connection is what control systems fear most, because once you truly feel it, you can't be convinced you are alone, powerless, or insignificant. Understanding quantum consciousness is not about rejecting science or abandoning reason. It's about recognizing that reason itself must grow to match the reality we inhabit. The cycle of control thrives on a narrow definition of truth. Breaking it means embracing a broader view, one that includes the possibility that our awareness is not only real, but fundamental, not only personal, but universal. And once you see that, the game changes entirely. When you begin to view consciousness through the lens of quantum reality, the entire framework by which we measure purpose and success starts to shift. The conventional story we're handed from birth is rooted in materialist thinking. Life is a finite journey, defined by acquiring resources, achieving measurable goals, and leaving behind tangible accomplishments. Success is often described in terms of career status, wealth, possessions, or social recognition, all things that belong entirely to the physical world. This model makes sense if you believe your consciousness is tied only to your brain and ends when your body does. But if awareness is quantum in nature, if it is connected to something larger and more enduring than the physical body, then these definitions suddenly feel painfully small. In a quantum consciousness framework, purpose is no longer just about survival or competition. It becomes about growth, not just intellectual or emotional growth, but the expansion of awareness itself. The value of your life is measured less by what you own, and more by how deeply you have learned to perceive, to connect, and to act in alignment with a greater whole. This is not to say that material success is meaningless. but rather that it is secondary to something more profound: your role in a vast, interconnected reality where every thought, choice, and intention may ripple far beyond your immediate surroundings. Once you accept this possibility, you begin to notice how much of the old model of success is designed to distract you from it. The constant race for more money, more things, more recognition, is a clever way of keeping attention fixed outward, away from the deeper inner work of understanding who and what you really are. In a sense, the traditional pursuit of success becomes another form of control, a loop that keeps people busy, climbing ladders that lead nowhere of real consequence. But quantum consciousness reframes the journey entirely. It suggests that the greatest achievements are those that expand not just your personal life, but your understanding of the nature of reality itself. This change in perspective also challenges how we think about failure. If life is viewed purely through a materialist lens, failure can feel catastrophic, a sign that your limited time and resources have been wasted. But if consciousness is part of a continuous, non-local field, then even so-called failures may carry lessons or effects that extend far beyond the moment. They might influence the evolution of your awareness in ways that you only understand much later, or in ways that ripple through the quantum network, in ways you may never directly see. And this is where the real redefinition happens. Success becomes less about control and more about alignment, aligning your actions, intentions, and attention with a deeper truth that transcends physical outcomes. It becomes about how much you've contributed to the growth of your own awareness and the awareness of others, how much you've strengthened the connections that weave you into the fabric of reality. This is a far more expansive view of life's purpose, and it's one that can free you from the narrow, exhausting chase for external validation. If this perspective sounds radical, it's because it is. It challenges centuries of conditioning and invites you to step into a completely different relationship with life. And it also brings a quiet power. When your purpose is no longer bound by the limitations of the material world, you become far harder to manipulate, far less dependent on external approval, and far more attuned to the subtle signals of a deeper order that's always been there, just beyond the noise. The systems of the world may still measure you by their narrow standards, but you'll know better. You'll be operating according to a truth that they cannot touch. The journey into quantum consciousness is not just an exploration of science or philosophy, it's a personal awakening. Once you begin to see the possibility that your awareness is not confined to the brain, that it may be a fundamental aspect of reality itself, you cannot unsee it. Every interaction, every thought, every moment becomes charged with new significance. You start to question not just what you've been told about consciousness, but what you've been told about reality as a whole. And in that questioning lies the spark of transformation. For centuries, humanity has oscillated between spiritual intuitions about the mind and rigid, material explanations of existence. Quantum consciousness bridges those worlds. It offers a language in which mystical experiences can be discussed without dismissing them as superstition, while grounding the conversation in the cutting edge of physics and neuroscience. This synthesis doesn't diminish spirituality, it strengthens it, providing a framework in which ancient wisdom and modern discovery can coexist. The result is a worldview that neither denies the physical nor confines itself to it. Living with this awareness is both empowering and humbling. Empowering because you realize that your mind may be tapping into a network of information, possibility, and connection that transcends space and time. Humbling because such a reality reminds you that your individual experience is just one expression of a much larger, more mysterious whole. This shift in perspective can dissolve the illusion of separation between you and others, between humanity and nature, between life and death. You begin to sense the unity that so many spiritual traditions speak of, and now, quantum theory dares to hint at. A future shaped by this understanding would be radically different from the one we are heading toward now. Education would nurture not only analytical skills, but intuitive and creative faculties that flourish in the quantum mind. Medicine would treat consciousness as an integral factor in healing, not just a side effect of brain health. Ethics would evolve to reflect the reality of interconnected awareness, making it far harder to justify actions that harm others or the planet. And perhaps most importantly, the pursuit of knowledge itself would shift from conquest, mastering the world, to communion, learning how to live in harmony with the deeper patterns of reality. But awakening to this potential also comes with responsibility. If consciousness truly influences reality at a quantum level, then every thought and intention matters more than we can imagine. Awareness becomes not just a personal gift, but a collective responsibility. The way we direct our focus, the values we choose to embody, and the connections we choose to strengthen, all ripple outward in ways we might never directly see. This means that cultivating awareness is not just self-improvement, it is a form of contribution to the evolution of consciousness itself. And this is where your journey continues. Because while no single video, book, or lecture can contain the full truth of quantum consciousness, you now have the starting point. The rest depends on what you do with it. The systems of the world are not built to encourage this kind of exploration. In fact, they thrive when people remain unaware of their true nature. That's why we've created Insights Academy, our free newsletter where we share the deeper, uncensored knowledge we can't post here. And for a limited time, you'll also get a free copy of the Kabbalion when you sign up. The link is in the description. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Because the greatest loss is not missing out on a trend or a headline. The greatest loss is living your life without ever realizing what you are truly capable of. You are more than biology, more than circumstance, more than a fleeting spark in an indifferent universe. You are part of the quantum fabric of reality, and that means you have the power to shape it. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."